Right. Okay, cool. So I've got Sam with me, and Sam is a musician. He's a trumpeter. He's a composer of some note, and we're going to have a coaching session. So, what would you like to spend our time on, Sam? We've got for this one. This is like a laser coaching session. I asked in the Just Play community on Facebook if there are people who would like a session. You put your hand up. So, how would you like to spend our 30 minutes or so today? What would be most useful to you? What would be wonderful for us to dive into and get some nutrients from?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about what would be the best question. And the question of how to ask you a laser focused question was on my mind for the last couple of days, as there's so many different avenues that that I take as a musician, and many people do anyway, but mainly because I've moved to a different country, how to find new ways of being now that my life is a bit different and there's less gigs happening. And also I have an issue, physical issue with ringing in the ears and jaw tension from playing the trumpet. So there's a lot more rest that's needed between playing. And part of my thoughts were to introduce myself as offering some teaching online, and that might help. Just kind of help my new life here. So how would I find new ways of being in this new environment, and given my physical restrictions? If you could help in any way, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, well, let's explore. So when you say new ways of being, help me understand. I know that I've put a post up, right? But I always know that even though we might use the same words, sometimes specific aspects of it, or there's something about it that appeals. When you say you'd like to find new ways of being, when you say that, what are you referring to? Like, what's the value for you in? What do you mean by new ways of being?
Well, what I think being is, as opposed to in your post you're saying doing, is kind of more of how you approach life with your mind and your general behavior, rather than your specific different bits of things, like I'm now going to practice the trumpet and do my scales. That's not what I mean by being. I would say general practices which help me be a better person, and in turn a better musician, as in like mindfulness practices. I would say that was a way of moving towards a better way of being, as opposed to practicing your scales or transcribing. That's not
right. So for example, like the kind of presence and the kind of groundedness that a mindfulness practice supposedly is there to bring. I say supposedly because I see a variety of different outcomes. some people get very thinky about what mindfulness is and how it becomes a kind of doing. And I also have experienced people who they seem to have a very mindful kind of way about them. So that's what I'm hearing. So how do you want, if you could design your being, or if you could choose or control, or like what would you, in what way would you love to be? How do you want to be?
I suppose generally I'm quite impulsive and have a history of not thinking before doing stuff, but that was kind of part of the magic of improvising on stage. As part of that, it's very spontaneous and in character. Rather than thinking before speaking, I'll just blurt it out. And I see other people who really take time to think and then they speak. So that's something I'm not going to completely change, but that's something that I might start to do a little bit more. Yeah, I'm not sure if I've got to the crux of it, but it's a
Well,
general way of being
you're
thoughtful.
doing just fine, mate. I suppose what you're doing really well, because these. And I was saying this to somebody this morning, about an hour ago, and I was on a session with somebody, that it's like there are, like at school, you're given questions where you're given a maths puzzle and there's an answer, there's a tangible answer, or like maybe something a bit broader, but it's still in that kind of intellectual realm. And there's a question, and then you might have an opinion, and that's the answer, and it still kind of turns up into a form, right? But when it comes to the kinds of questions that, I mean, we're talking about a deep, big, one of life's kind of big questions. We're talking about your essence, or your kind of way of being in the world. Like that's not a small thing that necessarily could be encapsulated in words very well. And it's not really just about, well, it's not at all about coming up with the right kind of answer. This is more, it's more that in a way I'm not too concerned. And I would invite you not to be too concerned by like what you come up with. It's more what happens within you whilst you're considering it, right? Because for most of us, there is this way of being that we've ended up adopting, that we didn't necessarily choose, or we didn't necessarily even realize we were being, right? So there's a certain way of being, and sometimes for me, for example, sometimes I've been impulsive, and sometimes I would say that I have been easily distracted, and I've kind of worn that as a bit of a badge of honor. It's like, oh well, I can go with the flow, man. But sometimes when I've really needed to focus on something, my kind of identity that I made of go with the flow and I'm free is sometimes been, I can't concentrate, or I don't focus very well. So like my something I've noticed is that, I'm kind of hearing aspects of it in what you're saying, is that what I want is more freedom to choose in the moment. Like I want to kind of mindfully or kind of be aware of what's happening in the moment, so that there are times when I can kind of let go and follow the flow of the music if I'm playing or improvising something. But there are other times when I know that this is the time to really block off all distractions, and I have the conscious choice. So it's that kind of conscious living that is part of what I would say I would choose to be. Now that's not a right answer, it's not the truth, but that's do you see what I'm kind of pointing to there?
I think part of the reason why I picked this as being our thing, rather than being specific about a piece of, how to get more pupils or whatever,
right,
or get more gigs or more, is because of my physical issues. A lot of these things, these symptoms that I have, are classic from a stress-induced symptoms. And finding a new way of being in order to reduce the stress, to hopefully reduce the issues, that's part of it. But even if I didn't have these symptoms, there's certain aspects of my own character that irritate me, as in, for example, imagine sitting in a classroom and then being the first to say something rather than waiting for someone else to say, to stick their hand up and say something. Is that kind of thing of not thinking first, or maybe not even quite understanding what the person is saying and still just blurting something out. So there's just like a character default that I've had, and like you were saying, it would be nice to have a choice, about my own character. And I have been getting as in my wisdom and getting older, there are times
Mm.
when, you know, I do think first. And in building relationships, for example, producing someone in the studio rather than blurting out, it's a fucking F sharp, you know. There's other ways of saying things, you know.
I've tried that one too. It doesn't go down so well, does it?
Yeah, so I've been getting better with that. Or for example, if someone has done a mix for me, and it doesn't sound as good as you would expect or as they normally do, rather than just listing all of the crap things, you say something good first, you know, that you do like about it, and then breaking it up. So that's something that I've got better at over the years. But that doesn't really deal with what we're talking about, which is getting to the essence of being and character and how to improve your life. And then maybe in turn, new avenues of work, you know, might come, and it might be easier, you know, to forge relationships because of this new mindset.
Sure. Okay. Right. So the first thing that's occurring to me is that I really love the fact that you're asking this question. I really love that you're making it the focus, because it gives, you know, it gives us some space to sort of hang out in a deep topic, rather than kind of arriving that that's what we need to actually sort of get to. So I'm acknowledging the fact that that's in itself, that shows a level of self-awareness. I just want to underline that there's already that level of self-awareness, and already that you know, that doesn't sound to me like someone who's, you know, you said about sort of blurting something out straight without thinking. Like, it sounds like you've already been through a mindful thinking through, focusing kind of process to even get to this topic of conversation, which shows me that maybe you're not as fixed as you might think you are, or it might not be as much of a character trait or a kind of personality trait in your DNA as it might seem that it was, right? So that's just, I just want to like underline that, because
yeah,
part of the thing that goes on often is that we get told that our personality is this very personal, fixed thing. And one of the most mind-blowing things that I've ever realized or been told actually is that actually it's not just me that's doing the thinking, this kind of fixed me, but the very thing I'm calling me is a thought. I'm thinking me, this thing, this myth, this character, this story, this bag of limitations or whatever, or possibilities, or personality traits. Like I'm thinking all of that up. So if there's a limit, there's only one thing that limit is made of, which is it's made of thought. So which means that, and I'm not saying you have to think differently. You don't have to think differently, but when thinking about yourself changes, when your self-concept, some people call it self-esteem, some people call it you know, separate self, or body mind, or, you know, but when your self-concept or ego, you know, when the form of that, the details of that story changes, then that's kind of the root of your life being different, because you're no longer the label that you had anymore. You're something beyond that. So what that realization does is that this is why it's not about doing, it's about who is the source, what is the source, right? And this, because we're so close to this thing we call I, me, we're so close to it, it's so obvious to it, it's almost mundane. It's almost like, oh, obviously I'm me, but what we're doing in this kind of conversation is to like turn the camera lens in on itself and kind of go, well, let's look at the actual lens, and let's not just kind of dismiss it. Let's allow ourselves to you know, they might say, look within,
Yeah.
and go, okay, well, if I could be anyway, anyhow, like what would I like to make possible? Like, you know, there was a time when I would say, I want to be more confident in the world, or I want to I want to really know that I'm capable of anything, or you know, I want to know that I can speak into being a new project, and for it to be successful. Like, I have that influence in the world. I have that manifesting kind of capacity, right? Now, those look like impossibilities to the old Nick character.
Yeah. But now you focused. See, I didn't. The weird thing is, because I was so just completely full on and over the top, just generally, specifically in my 20s, leading up to the success that happened in the beginning of my 30s. I was very much a leader, very much made things happen, you know. I never had a issue with that confidence that you're talking about. But now I'm in a completely different country, without really the ability to work in the same way as before, and with these physical issues. It really is a new environment, a new life, and how to find a new way, or to find a new way of living and a new way of being and doing. You know, all these things, it's like a whole new life, you know. And I noticed these my own character traits coming back, not in a bad way, but for example, I don't know if this is going off topic, hopefully it's not, but there's a recording studio, the guy that runs it very near our house, become very good friends very quickly, and we just automatically just got on. And he has these social evenings on Thursdays, and I meet up people never met before, and there's sometimes a language barrier with Dutch to English, but normally I'm just cracking jokes just straight away, and it's just there. And I feel like, oh God, it's happening again. I'm just like the center of attention again, you know. Why does this always happen? Why can't I just like let someone else be the center of attention? You know?
What's wrong with that, out of interest? Because it sounds like that.
It's something which in the moment I enjoy, but in hindsight, I always feel slightly embarrassed and think, oh, maybe I should have listened more to the other people's stories. For example, not just other people's stories. I don't remember people's names very well in these situations. So I've come out and I can't even remember these people's names. And I've had like really fun time with them. And I haven't taken the time to even store these people's names, you know. It's like, what's that about? So that for me feels like there's something internally in my character that could be, you know, I could think, you know, first and like trying to store this information, you know.
Sure. So if I was, you know, in the interest of sort of going quite laser focused, so if it was how you would love it to be, if you were being how you want to be, how would you know? What would let you know that you're being how you want to be in that respect when it comes to those kind of situations?
I would say maybe I wouldn't want to change my character because I am who I am, but maybe find a way to store that information a bit, you know, in those situations. You know, maybe it's a defense mechanism that comes in when you meet new people as well, you know, to be that funny character or whatever, you know.
Okay. And if you didn't need to be the funny character, and that you could kind of let go of pretending that you don't want people to like you, right? Like
Yeah.
we all do. So if you could let that go, and just be yourself, like how would you be being if you were just being yourself? You didn't need to worry about coming across a certain way to
Yeah.
them.
I think I'd
How would
probably be
that be?
exactly the same way, Nick. Like, in reality, I don't want to, yeah, I'm thinking like, it was just a thought that I understand and totally respect that, like, pretending that that thing of you want people to like you, but I wouldn't say that that's why I was trying to be the funny character. I think it just comes out. It's like,
Right. Well, that's good.
it's
That's
just like,
useful to know, right?
that's like the essence. I think that is my essence, and I think that, like, just to have that as the essence, and that's fine, and it's great, and it's why people get on with me and I get on with people, and they like me for who I am. And if they don't like that over the topness, then we may not be friends, you know. However,
Right.
to hold back just a little bit, to be a little bit more mindful, to use that word again, to store a bit more information. And I do, you know, it's not like I'm not asking people about themselves. I'm very interested in what other people have, and I understand the stories and remember the stories, but it's like, I'm just not very good at remembering the names, you know. I don't know if you have, how do you remember people's names straight away? You know, it's like they say it once and then you don't want to then say, oh, just tell me your name again, you know. It's like,
Well, yeah. So that there's. Well, I'll tell you the thing that occurs to me, because you know that there are. I mean, if anybody that sort of Googles or sort of goes searching for like that, there are kind of things that people always say about like little memory techniques, and so you try and use their name back to them as soon as you can. And you know, like when I used to be a classroom teacher. When I was doing that, it became a habit. Like I just need to use. I wasn't, because I wasn't used to using people's names. I just go hello, you know, hello, or how are you. I would
yeah,
avoid using it. It's just kind of becoming making a habit of kind of using the name. But apart from that, the thing that allows, well, this is my opinion, but the thing that allows you to kind of to do that is if, you know, if I have a conversation with somebody now and I don't catch their name, and I go and this feeling arises in me, it's like, oh God, I wasn't listening. Oh God, that's how terrible of me. I have that moment of self-judgment, but I don't like beating myself up about it, or kind of taking my own opinion of myself seriously is optional. So much more than I mean, I don't really tend to think about whether I've you know, whether I come across as having listened or not. I tend to now go, oh, I've just realized, I'm terribly sorry, I just realized I asked you your name, I've forgotten it. Isn't that terrible? Could you tell me your name again?
yeah,
You know, and you just, it's kind of like, you know, someone described it to me as like telling on your ego. It's like you kind of go like, oh well, you forgot the name. It's like, oh, I forgot my name, I forgot your name.
yeah.
And they go, oh, that's okay, I forgot yours as well, what's your name? And
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
like,
It's
oh, thank
normal. It is a
God.
normal thing. It's maybe not that. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
calling everyone man all the time, you know, it's like,
Yeah, that might have some issues. But
so yeah, so maybe we went down slightly a strange path in that last discussion, going on about yeah, forgetting people's names, but it is an essence of character in a social situation, you know.
well, you know what? Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but I think what it relates to is your relationship with your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Like ultimately, I think it boils down to that, because there are these thoughts that come up in a conversation, or there are these thoughts that come up in a certain situation, and it's very easy, it's very natural and normal for us to kind of think that because I thought it must be true. So I'm a terrible person because I didn't hear their name. I've had that thought or something similar. and this thought arrived, it must be true. But over time, what's happened is actually I've noticed that it is a thought more than being so concerned with what the thought is saying, because it's just, it's just an opinion about myself in that moment, right? And what I've noticed is that it's weird, I can have a very judgmental thought about myself or my performance or the way I'm communicating on something. And it turns out later that no one else apart from me was being that hard on myself. And that blows my mind, because I lived for years thinking that because I thought it was true, because thought's job is to create a story of your life or a movie of your life that is compelling. It's like it's a movie, and it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it all has a logic, and it has to have a happily ever after, and it has to have an A causes B causes C. So we thought kind of makes the story on top of a kind of ambivalent universe. It's like the universe doesn't really give a monkeys about how things turn out, but for our meaning that we put on it. So it's knowing that you are the thinker, or you are the creator of this way of being, but also of this way of framing the story. You're like the movie director. You're like the person who chooses where to sort of focus the lens of the camera.
You are your own universe. Is that pretty much what you're saying? You are all of these different things, all these different people. Yeah, and everyone else has their own whether they know that they're their own universe or not is they might come to that at some point. But I totally get what you're saying, and sometimes I lose track of that. And
we all do, buddy. We all do.
To get to be put there. What we're saying. These they're just thoughts. It's not.
They can be very compelling. Yeah, they can. They're real thoughts, and the thoughts have a kind of reality to them, because that's what we're calling reality. But what looks really true to me is that you are definitely thinking. No matter what, you are definitely doing the thinking of the experience. You're thinking up the experience. You're doing the experiencing, and that is a creative, by its nature. That's a creative act. Thinking is a creative act. Experiencing is a creative act. It's not a responsive, like oh, they made me feel. He hurt my feelings, or whatever. It's not. It doesn't. We say it in words, but what we're really doing is generating a feeling, generating an experience, generating a perception, generating a focus, a meaning, a story, a narrative, a character. And when the attention goes more on that fact than the contents of that thinking, when the attention goes more on the fact that you are thinking, the fact that you are doing the being, you're creating this way of being in the world, then you're free again to choose, well, how am I being right now? How am I being in this relationship? How am I being in this conversation? How would I like to be? Now, that first one, how am I being, is like, that can be a bit of an ego slap. It can be a bit uncomfortable, because I might realize, like, I'm being a bit of a dick. I'm being a bit of a so-and-so to people, because I'm being really judgmental about this person, or I'm being really impatient, or I'm being very self-judgmental, so I'm giving myself a hard time.
I wouldn't say that it's, even though we came up with that thing of like, fuck, I'm a really bad person, I can't remember these people's names, but genuinely had a really good time at these social events, because there's not much been going on here, so meeting up the studio and meeting new people is great. And then I meet them again, like, oh, that was a really cool night. You know, it's not like they've ever thought, you know, like you were being over the top. They just thought, you know, who's this wacky English dude? You know, it's like he was fun. I hope that's what they got out of it.
Yeah.
But to focus in on the thing about really the essence of what the question was leading to, where I kind of wanted to get to, which is quite a deep and personal thing. I don't know how much more time we've got, but a lot of these stress related ailments that I have may have something to do with, which is boiled down to something that's happened in the past and the way that I deal with stressful situations. For example, instead of getting into a deep heated conversation, or back in the day, you know, when you're a teenager growing up with your mum or your dad, you might have like shouting matches at each other. All right. And now as an adult, having been through that doesn't happen, you know, when disagreements happen. So you hold that stuff inside you, you try and talk it through, but you might not then talk it out in the right way, and it holds inside you, and it kind of, without knowing it, something happens, stress related, physical, because you haven't been able to voice that. Whereas maybe having that screaming match or getting it out like that might stop these elements being so painful, for example, you know.
Right.
I don't know if that's something I'm looking into, and why I'm looking into mindfulness practices, you know, other than like just trying to treat the issue by having like physio on the jaw or something,
Yeah.
you know, or craniosacral therapy. It is more of an internal thing that needs to happen for me to maybe heal my body. But at the same time, it could be a character, you know, it could really help me just generally, which is why I spoke about my character, you know.
Right. Okay. So
sorry, a lot to unpack there.
No, and again, I just want to acknowledge like the level of self-awareness that asks that kind of question, really worth acknowledging, because it's not always obvious, you know, like I'm hearing you ask a question about, I want to find out the root, I want to investigate the root of the problem, not just the surface level, which is, it's in itself, it's a very powerful stance, inner stance to take, to that kind of self-inquiry. So I think that's really to be acknowledged. And you're right that, you know, mind and body are one system. It's all one. It is all related. It's all the same. You know, like there's a reason why, and I get some jaw stuff from playing saxophone. There's a reason why, you know, that we hold on to tension. And you're right that it's without without an internal root to it, there would be no need for that kind of holding on. So it makes sense to look at, inquire into, you know, like what gives rise to it. So
it could be the playing on top of like stressful, this, I mean, for everyone it's been incredibly stressful for the last 2 years, right, obviously. So yeah, it could be muscle tension versus unrelated playing stresses, which accumulate into like tensions physically and stress related injuries, you know. Is that kind of what you were saying as well?
What I was going to say, that there's layers to it, and what I'm going to speak to now is what I think is the root of the problem. So there's I'm not saying this, it's not invalid to, you know, have some kind of you know, physical therapy or movement therapy, or kind of deal with somebody who's got expertise of working with the structures of the body like that. I'm not saying that's irrelevant, because it isn't, and it's I'm having some physiotherapy myself at the moment, and it's wonderful, and it's really making a huge difference. And the root of the problem is our relationship with our feelings, right? And this is psychotherapists say it, you know, it's in the world of coaching, it's in you know, it's how comfortable and welcoming you are with any feeling arising. So Sydney Banks said, if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. All right. So for most of us, we have, you know, what Carl Jung referred to as a shadow. You know, that there's who I think I should be, and then anything other than who I think I should be is not allowed. And when I feel like I'm on the territory of who I think I shouldn't be, it makes sense to lock that away, hide that from public view, berate myself, change it, right? And part of the reason why things like mindfulness practices or what have you, it can sometimes bring up a powerful reaction is because you become mindful of the whole thing, right? There used to be this kind of pushing down of some stuff that we think is shameful or we think is dark or we think is not allowed, and actually we start to go, oh, I'm aware of the fact I'm like holding this beach ball under the water and how much effort I'm putting into it, and then it's go, oh, it doesn't make sense to do that anymore, and then we're confronted with the fullness of our real experience, the kind of, you know, what people might call subconscious thoughts or what have you, and there's a kind of period of like integration, you might call it, or kind of learning to be with feelings like shame or anger or the ones we wouldn't necessarily put on our Facebook status or whatever. You know, so over time, what Sid was referring to, I think, was learning that, you know, no matter what feelings arise, no matter what thoughts arise or circumstances arise, there is a peace to be found in the midst of it. You don't need to, you know, none of this like this too shall pass stuff. You don't, not that, but this too. I accept this part of myself. I accept my judgmental side. I accept my the dark thoughts that I have. I accept the violent thoughts that I have, because we all have them. We all have the stuff that we wouldn't put and advertise. We all have a really full human experience on the inside, but we because we have this concept of how I should be, we can edit stuff out, or we can try and gild or gold plate who we're being. And as you let go of that need to kind of improve the self and learn to be with. I'm not saying you don't have to, you know, like if I'm in a queue in Tesco's, I'm not gonna, just because I think, oh, I'm so annoyed, I want to punch this guy. Just because I have that thought doesn't mean because I'm accepting it, I'm going to punch him. I can choose how I be with the thought. I don't have to act on the thought. I'm not saying you don't necessarily need to speak it, right? But in myself, I accept it. I welcome it into my experience. It doesn't scare me anymore. Then there's no, when that's true, when you're not scared of your experience, you don't need to protect yourself from the bad feelings, from the bad thoughts, from the thoughts about my past. You don't need to protect yourself anymore. You can be with them, be loving towards them and to your real self. And
so if there's, for example, things dark things that have happened, for example, maybe someone has been horrible to you or your family, and for example, those things which you when you voice them with people that know the story, you know, it helps it get it out and helps you get over it, and time heals and all that kind of thing. but suppressing these things too much, that's what can cause damage. So revealing these, I get what you're saying, but when there's something maybe that's been there, which is really like something that was scary, or something that you've really pushed under the surface. Yeah, it's good to talk those things out, for example, with with someone that deals with that kind of thing, and that will help the layers come out. Is that, would you suggest that? Obviously we can't do that here, but is that all part of the same thing when you push it under the surface? If you accept it, but if there's something that in the past which has really been terrible, how does that fit into the equation?
It's more about being with the thoughts, being with the feelings. It's not so much, it doesn't have to be spoken about necessarily. That's not the only way to do that. It's more, like if there's been a beach ball held underwater, to use that metaphor again, it's more the fact that you let go of it. Right, that could be, there are various different ways to do that, but even like the fact that we're spending time and attention, and you've prepared for this call, and you've directed the focus onto that, like that is the thing that you're asking about. Like you're already doing that, and then it reveals a little bit. You go, oh, there's something there. Like for me, a couple of weeks ago, I had a coaching session with my coach, similar kind of thing, and I noticed that I had picked up from someone in my maybe family or school or something that who I wanted to fundamentally be was a positive person. So if I'd kind of made it my default that if I had a negative, by my judgment, negative feeling, I needed to hide it, or I needed to not allow myself to feel it. Right, and what I realized in that coaching session, because it occurred to me, and I sort of went, oh, maybe I should look at that. I realized that actually, when I allow myself to be with scary feelings or overwhelming feelings, like it turned out it was okay. And then I found myself in coaching sessions being more honest with people, in my social media presence being more honest. I found what physically I felt freer to the way I was breathing. It affected something. I noticed small physical changes, because there wasn't this kind of like, I've got to make it okay, there was something that could be released. And it was because I had that insight into, oh, I was holding back, or I was putting a mask on. And that to me is the power of the coaching process, which is it reveals the fact that there is a mask, and it gives you the option to take it off, and in a safe environment where turns out you can, it's actually more beautiful to be your unleashed, unfettered self. It's actually more safe.
I think that just having that, being able to voice that without talking about it specifically, I'm realizing, just from the nature of, like, I'm feeling like a release of stress now, because we've spoken about it,
right?
And it's almost like the beach ball is coming up a little bit, just because I'm becoming aware of it, rather than just like pushing it down, and it's wonderful to have that experience now with you. Just know, so it was like a little bit like this, like you were saying, it's like talking about what it is, and then really when it got down to the crux of it, it really helps, Nick. So whether you know or not, something physically just happened to me after I mentioned that there was something dark that was maybe being subdued, and it's something that I have absolutely no power to go back and change. It didn't happen directly to me, but this thing about the mask, and obviously these kind of things you can't really share in public. You would never post these things on Facebook, and when people do reveal these certain things about on Facebook, and they write big long posts, and they wonder why their friends don't even like it or react, that's maybe not the place for this kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, there can be value in talking specifics. You know, people go to therapy, or they have. I do it through the medium of coaching, but it's in many ways it's the same thing. It's investigating how you're being and how you're thinking. And the beautiful thing, I think, that the beautiful thing is that in a way, you don't always need to go into the content. You don't always. I mean, it can be useful. I'm not saying it's never useful, but you know, I have a sense for what you could be talking about. We don't need to go into detail given the public forum, but what I do know to be true is that it's the recognizing of that kind of pattern that then suddenly has you go, oh, I've been holding this beach ball under the surface, and if I take a little bit of it, you know, into my hands and let it up a little bit, what am I still safe? Let's see if can I be with that?
Yeah.
Can I be with that? Can I let it go? Can I be? And it always turns out that you can. It involves, you know, it involves you learning new ways of being and doing. Like,
I think
but that
saying,
realization.
can I be safe, is like, in terms of the specific thing that we are but are not talking about. I think that is what it is. We want to be safe. We want our families to be safe.
Sure.
And that's the most scary thing, when there's something which makes you feel not safe, for example, and may even, you know, make you move to another country, for example, you know, and then realizing that actually moving to the other country doesn't make you, it doesn't actually change the way that the way
you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So that makes a whole lot of sense. What I used to say to people as a teacher was, you know, your fears are the hurdles that you need to jump over to get to where you need to be. And I used to say that to people, and that was kind of like, I was fearless with that for myself, you know. And maybe I need to listen to my old advice.
Yeah,
is that I don't know where I got that phrase from. It's just a phrase. I don't know if you would agree with that phrase, or if it.
Well, you can. The great thing is that fear, anger, shame, anxiety, you know, whatever the emotion, the word, the experience, it turns out, well, this is my assertion, and, you know, do the experiment in a way that makes sense to you, but it turns out that even the feelings you think you can't handle, turns out you can handle them, right? You know, so in a way, there's not even a need to kind of leap over them. The way out is through, like, it's by knowing that you can be with the experience of shame, anger, humiliation, anxiety, you know, the stuff that we wouldn't necessarily want to broadcast, because it would be weird to like go, oh, I'm so useless, oh, I'm so shameful of myself, you know. It would be weird. That's not what the medium is for. It's kind of, it's not that people, you know, are putting a positive spin and it's toxic positivity or anything. It just would be a little bit odd to and sort of self-indulgent, and people do it, but it's not about the doing. It's about the way of, like, can I welcome this thought in? Can I welcome this feeling in? Do I have the courage to kind of investigate the feeling? And is it as harmful or as scary as I believe it to be? And it's always the thought about it that's the scary thing, rather than the actual experience.
Okay.
It always boils down to that. You know, in the eye of the storm, there's complete stillness, complete peace, complete safety. Now, I'm not saying in the world of doing that you let stuff, you know, remain unchanged that needs changing if you need to, you know, move house or have a court case or talk to somebody. Like, there's stuff you do, but that's a different domain to the world of your inner stance with your feelings. When it comes to your psychological system, you can be with any feeling, you can be with any thought, and then you can breathe with any
Yeah.
feeling. You can, you can be your full, expanded physical form with any feeling too. It has a knock-on effect, right?
I think that's good that we got there, because like the thing about like, oh, I need to, there's aspects of a character which could be changed. That's really, I suppose that's not it. It's like what we got to at the end, that's it, it's yeah, that's it, that's the deep thing. And it's like, oh, changing that bit of aspect about your character isn't going to do anything for the eye of the storm.
Yeah,
like
that's
not
that. There are
remembering someone's
consequences.
name kind of doesn't matter, as long as you're like, in essence, having a good time and being and both of you, even if you don't remember their name, get something great and fun out of the experience.
Yeah. It made sense to me to go a little longer with this, because it felt like we would kind of.
I'm sorry that we did.
No, you don't need to be sorry. It was on me. I'm saying, like, I know at the beginning we'd said it was shorter, but this made sense to kind of get to that place that we talked. And I thought it felt like we were getting there, so that was why.
That's fantastic, Nick. Thank you so much.
Useful.
Yeah, very useful, and we can do. It'd be great to talk again. And go further and see if there's any developments,
Oh, buddy, well, we can do that offline and stuff. So yeah, awesome. I'm glad it's helpful. And yeah, drop me a line or something to let me know like how things are kind of looking to you after a couple of days. Because usually what happens is after you kind of start to let it off a little bit, and then you start to then see implications. So you'll catch yourself in an angry feeling where you wouldn't have caught yourself before, and you go, oh, this is my angry feeling, it hasn't been done to me, or this is my embarrassed feeling, it hasn't been done to me. And then this kind of space for choice, this kind of option arises. So it tends to sort of have this kind of ripple effect afterwards. So I'd love to hear what's showing up for you after the call.
That would be great. Thanks so much, Nick. Awesome.
All right, buddy.
It's nice to talk about this rather than, this is what you do, make your website,
yeah. Good choice of topic. Nice one, man. All right, good stuff.
All right, bless you.
See you soon.
See you later.
Right. Bye.
Bye.